Welcome back to another episode of Saturday with Sam, where today, well, let's go ahead and grab your cup of coffee and we'll go ahead and talk about something fun from the book of James. So stay tuned. So the weather right now is kind of rainy and foggy, and you can see up there, it's just kind of overall nasty. And it's interesting weather, but anyway, first time at work back since before Christmas, and been having a kind of a long day, gotten a lot done and really feeling good about the day, so I thought I'd take a break and chat with you guys for a couple minutes. So this morning in our team devotions, I work at World Vision corporate offices in Washington State, and this morning during our team's devotional time, we were reading through the book of James in chapter 2, and in that book, James talks a lot about faith and works, and he talks about it from a perspective that until this morning I didn't quite fully understand. And as you read it, it talks about, James chapter 2, towards the second half, talks about faith without works is dead. And he says, you show me your faith and I'll show you my faith by what I do. And he talks about Abraham being justified by faith, and Rahab being justified by faith, and all these different founding fathers who were justified not just by faith but by what they did. And the interesting thing about that is that up until today, I had always read that as kind of a salvation message, right? So you want to be saved, confess and believe, Romans 10:9 and 10, that you'll be saved, confess that Jesus is Lord, and believe in your heart that he rose from the dead, and you'll be saved. That's what the Bible says. Well, the interesting thing about that whole verse, though, in James, is that it has nothing to do at all with salvation. No, it's talking about faith. Faith without works is dead. What does that really mean? As I was thinking about it, one thing that struck me is we often attribute our relationship with Christ and whether or not we're going to be saved by how much we do. And it clearly is not the case. No, you have to look at it from the perspective of how God looks at it. Once you're saved, you're saved. But your relationship with God, because of Jesus, should drive you to a place that you want to change, that you want to be different. Now, clearly the challenge is that we often misinterpret this verse to talk about salvation, and clearly relationships vary. The relationship I have with my wife is not the same kind of relationship that I have with my kids or my parents or anything like that. But relationship with God should be more intimate, more deep, more meaningful than the relationship you have with your family and with your spouse and with your kids. And God talks very clearly in the Bible about how relationship with Him should be much more like a marriage, but it's much deeper than that. He's the creator of the universe. The Bible says that He has the hairs on our head numbered, and that He knows us. He formed us in the womb. And the interesting thing about all of this is that this relationship that we have with Him needs to deepen every day. And the more it deepens, the more we should begin to start acting justly, to want to clean up our lives, to want to change how we behave to our fellow man. And the times that we don't see that happen is the times that we're really not trying all that hard, So one thing I walked away from today with that verse in James was this overwhelming sense that to evaluate our relationship with God, we really must pay attention to our actions, to look at what we do on a day in and day out basis. How you treat your spouse, how you treat your kids, how you treat your fellow human being is a quick, very easy indicator. In fact, the Bible talks about, in the Gospels, Jesus actually says, if you hate your fellow man, you've basically committed murder. If you lust after a woman, you've committed adultery in your heart. So much of what we do comes from our hearts, and we have to evaluate our hearts constantly to make sure that we are following through with our relationship with God, and how we treat our fellow man is an easy, quick indicator. Do we treat them with contempt? Do we treat them with jealousy? Do we treat them with frustration? You know, that might be a little hard to understand and conceptualize. So let me just break it down to a real level. I'm going to go from preaching to meddling here. Is that sister or aunt or family member that you really cannot stand? Are you holding a grudge against them? If you are, life is too short, man. Just give it up. There's nothing that should get in the way of your chance to have a relationship with them. And maybe they don't want a relationship with you. I completely get that. But you need to forgive them in your heart. You need to let go of whatever's causing that grudge in your heart. Maybe you need to apologize to them. And if so, I'd encourage you to do that today. Anyway, I'm running out of space on my phone here, but thanks for watching Saturday with Sam. If you really enjoyed this, I ask you to go ahead and subscribe down below. Hit that like button as I continue, excuse me, as I continue to produce more of these and get better at this. I'd love to get feedback from you guys as to what you would want me to share and talk about. So anyway, thanks. Saturday with Sam.